Okay, thank you, members. Welcome to this meeting of the Ad Hoc Community Asset Transfer Appeal Subcommittee. There is no chair for this meeting, so can I first ask members to appoint a chair?
Happy to nominate Councillor Marshall.
No, I don't want to chair it, thanks. I'm having problems with my internet connection, so.
Okay, we have another nomination for chair, please.
Councillor Little, would you do it?
Yes, I'll chair it, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, and welcome members. Claire, could we have the said written apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Tate today. As you know, Councillor Howie is here in the Council Hall. All other members present on Teams.
Thank you, Claire. And as Chair, I give my approval for members' remote participation. So go on to declarations of interest. Do any members have declarations of interest?
Chair, Councillor Drysdale contacted me earlier and saying she was putting in a declaration of interest.
I see Pauline has her hands up.
I do. Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I would like to declare a note of interest, please, as on further reading of the papers on page 18, paragraph 4, I see that the Kirkham Community Trust have been in contact with a local estate owner, a landowner who's opened up new walking paths, and they're looking to work together should things progress with regards to extra car parking for some walks that the landowner has opened up. Chair, I have no contact with this landowner, but I do have very close friends who are landowners in Kirkham, and I can't think who else it could be apart from the landowner mentioned in this report. I have known this family for a number of years, so I'm feeling that I need to declare an interest, unfortunately, and withdraw from the meeting. That's just the current status, so it's just really to get your feedback and if any guidance is required regarding that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Pauline. Claire, do we have any guidance whether Councillor Drysdale would be required to remove herself from this meeting?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I have discussed this matter with Councillor Drysdale prior to the meeting and have advised, given the circumstances, that she should consider withdrawing from the meeting. It's always a matter for the member to determine, but that was my advice.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And thanks for letting us know, Pauline.
That's great. I'll just withdraw. Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
So, Claire, are we still quorate?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. It requires 3 members to be quorum, so yes.
Okay, so we'll go to item 4, delegation to the Ad Hoc Community Asset Transfer Appeals Subcommittee report by the Director of Communities. And members are asked to note the remit of the Ad Hoc Community Asset Transfer Appeals Subcommittee as detailed at paragraph 3.2. Everyone okay about that?
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you. So item number 5, the Community Asset Transfer Review of Decision. Now, will I go through the points here, or do we have some advice on how we're going to be taking this forward, how we're going to be conducting this meeting?
Chair, you have Jamie Ferguson and Colin Freeman both in attendance at the meeting.
Yeah, but it's just this is the first time we've had this kind of subcommittee. So just for clarity on how are we just I'll go through the point, the notes here, the points that the members are asked to 1, note the procedure followed by the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee on the 17th of November 2020. when making this decision on the original community asset transfer request for the transfer of ownership of the car park, Church Road, Kirkham to Kirkham Community Trust as set up in paragraphs 3.1.7 and Appendix 1. So do we wish to start discussing this first? I'm not sure how we're going to be doing this, to be honest with you. Some advice, some help from Jamie or Colin would be good here at this point.
Chair, thank you. If it's okay with the Chair, I can run through the procedure that was followed in the run-up to FPT and at FPT, just to give members an overview of the steps we took. So in February 2020...
Just interrupt, so be quick second first, sorry. When we had our briefing last week, I asked, you went through a big long list of all the things that we have to make sure that we have, well, the FPT committee have gone through in the right order, etc. And I asked if we could have that list. Do we have that in the notes? Do we have that in the background items?
Yes, you do, Chair. All the information that was presented to Finance, Procurement and Transformation is linked in the background papers and covered in the report today. I understand that there was a bit of a clerical issue with the supplementary pack that was issued to members, but I understand that that's now been sorted. So members should have all the information that they require for the review today.
That's great. Thanks, Colin. Then carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you, Chair. In February 2020, the Council received a request from the Kirkham Community Trust for the car park in Church Road, Kirkham. The Kirkham Community Trust meet all the criteria laid out to be a community transfer body, and their application and their business plan met all the requirements that we required. Therefore, we validated that request in February of 2020. Under normal circumstances, we would then have 6 months to bring that request to a point of decision. However, due to the pandemic restrictions and the amended committee cycle or arrangements, we agreed an extension with the Trust to have the request considered at the first available opportunity, and that was in November 2020. We're required to seek the views of local members, so the request first goes to Wigton Area Committee, and that was on the 4th of November 2020. Local members agreed to recommend to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee to approve the request with no conditions attached. The request then went to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee on the 17th of November 2020 for a decision. Members considered the Trust's business plan for the car park, noted the recommendation of Wigton Area Committee, and then members proceeded to put forward a motion, amendment and a counter amendment. And the detail of this is detailed at paragraph 3.4 of the report and in Appendix 3. Members subsequently made their decision on the request, which was to refuse the request and asked the Council's Community Asset Transfer team to revisit the Kirkham Trust business plan with the Trust with a view to including the future use or the sale of the hall moving forward. The Kirkham Trust have issues with the decision, and those issues again are noted at paragraph 3.5 and in Appendix 2. The issues that the Trust have with the decision is that they feel Dumfries and Galloway Council refused to treat the car park and the village hall as two separate entities. Kirkham Community Trust feel that Dumfries and Galloway Council did not act within the spirit of the Community Empowerment Act. And finally, Dumfries and Galloway Council failed to accept that the Kirkham Community Trust can request the transfer of ownership of any publicly owned asset to assist in achieving their own goals. And again, these reasons are contained in Appendix 2 to the report. The Kirkham Trust submitted their request for review on 27th of July 2021, and we have a mandatory or 6 months to determine the review, which means we have to determine the review before 26th of January 2022. Nothing further to add, Chair, but welcome any questions that members may have.
Thanks, Colin. Do members have any comments, any questions for Colin?
Chair, if I may come in, please.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Colin, it's just regarding the competence of these objections to the decision made. I take it they are supported by the legislation of the Act. Looking at the Dumfries and Galloway Council refused to treat the car park and village hall as two separate entities. I take it the Trust are entitled to ask for one, either or both, and the Council cannot require them, cannot dictate what they take, what is consumed within their asset transfer bid. Would that be correct?
Thank you, Councillor Howie. Through the Chair, our procedure is quite clear, and as is the guidance from the Scottish Government, that eligible community transfer bodies are entitled to request what they wish in order to assist in achieving their own goals. And it was clear from the request that the Kirkham Community Trust only focused on the car park.
Thanks, Colin. Ian, you'd like to come in?
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that Colin has just explained the process that what had taken place. Today, are we going to treat this similar to an LRB, that after we've received this, we go into session and we make we debate it and make the consideration, or are we just going straight into that at this stage when Colin's still here?
Good question, Ian. How are we conducting this? Because this is the first time. This is the first time we've had this kind of subcommittee, so we're all kind of not understanding exactly what the process is going to be. Is it going to be one where we come out for session, as Ian has just asked? Does anyone have an answer to that one? Or are we just doing all our discussions here and deciding?
Chair, if I may, we have only had one review to date, and the process you just outlined about having the debate within the meeting is the process we followed the first time around.
Okay, thanks. I suppose we don't have members of the public, we don't have anyone from Kirkham Community Trust, so I suppose there is no necessity to be able to remove ourselves from that meeting. Councillor Blake, you'd like back in?
Yep, in that case, I'm quite happy with that. In that case, I think the whole crux of it, if we look at the agenda item 5, page 3, under the considerations, and it gives the last 3 lines of 311, that they have the right to make requests of any land or buildings that the field could make better use of, and it's up to the council to agree to the request unless there are reasonable grounds. And I think that's really the crux of it. That's our interpretation of it.
Yeah.
In this particular case, it was a car park associated with the village hall, although not attached to it. This group did make a request for a section of that road, be it the car park. They had an interest in the village hall, but when they found out the amount of damage or reparation it would need, they did not consider that to be viable. And I don't, personally speaking, I don't think we had the right to put it back to them and say you must consider the village hall before we'll consider an asset transfer. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ian. Just for clarity, Colin, and I'm sure that's just been said, but I didn't quite get it clear, are the car park and hall two separate entities?
Chair, yes, they are. The location map within the supplementary pack clearly shows that the car park and the hall are separated by a private piece of land. And there's also car parking in front of the village hall. And also, and I think it's important for members to know that part of the Kirkham Community Trust original business plan was to withdraw from the management of the hall and take ownership of a private shop, which is just across from the hall, to undertake their activities and deliver on their outcomes. And part of that was, so everything is in close vicinity, but actually independent of each other.
Yes, so basically the FPT decision was to insist that 2 separate entities were taken on board or none?
The wording of the decision is quite clear that they refused the request and asked that the council's community asset transfer team revisit the business plan with a view to including the future use or sale of the hall.
A separate entity, yeah.
Yes.
I'm just doing it all out loud for clarity, Colin. Thank you. Do any other members have any thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, Tracy, I put speak, but apologies.
Didn't even look there. Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, I just want to ask, is it not, before we get into discussing that, probably, is it best we take 2.1 and 2.2, because they're both for noting, and then we also have to agree if we've got at 2.3. So we probably need to take those 3 first, and then subject to that decision at 2.3, we can then go into the review. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. You're right, Sean. I'll do that. I'll run through them and then I'll bring in, I think Councillor Campbell, I think Dougie wants in then. But okay, we'll do, if all members that are present are happy with this, I'll go through the recommendations in 2.1, 2.2, and then our decision to 2.3 will determine whether we go into 2.4. So 2.1, note the procedure followed by the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee on the 17th of November 2020 when making its decision on the original community asset transfer request for the transfer of ownership of the car park, Church Road, Kirkham to Kirkham Community Trust as set out in paragraphs 3.1.7 and Appendix 1. We've already did that. I'm sure I said that at the beginning and we did note that already, Sean.
Yeah, noted. Yeah.
Right, so 2.2, note the reasons provided by the Kirkham Community Trust for the request for review as summarised in paragraph 3.5.2 and detailed in Appendix 2.
Noted, yeah.
And 2.3, determine if they have sufficient information to determine the review as detailed in paragraph 3.7.2.
Tracy, I have a point on this one.
All right then, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, just looking at the papers and looking at what went on at the FPT, it was the amendment won over the counter amendment, and then the amendment won over the motion. And I've looked in the documentation, but when you look at that amendment, I'm just wondering if that's competent, because it doesn't give a reason why they refused the car park. There's an inference that they want, in the second part of the amendment, but it seems to be like a separate request that they wanted them to go back and discuss. And I'm trying to kind of take from that they felt that they wanted it to be looked at as a job lot, so to speak. So they wanted both the whole, but it's not explicit within the amendment. So I'm just wondering, because there's no kind of real hard reasoning why the initial request was refused, is there any information in any of the papers that would give a reason why they refused it?
And if there was no full reason apart from the caveat of joining the two together in a job lot, as you said, then is it competent?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yes. Would you be able to answer that, Colin?
Chair, I think Jamie would like to come in at this point.
Great, thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, if helpful, Chair, the regulations again are clear that the default position for public bodies is that they agree an asset transfer unless they have reason to disagree it or to refuse it, in which case they must state their reason for refusal. So I think one of the members' considerations here has to be whatever the process that was undergone, at the end of the day, the minute is the decision, and that's the decision that was given to the community group. And there must be a consideration of the clarity of that decision.
So, basically saying there was no real reason for it. There's nothing down here except the caveat, then it's not clear, as Sean said, of a real reason. Judy, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I had originally put my hand up to make the same point that Sean had made, but another matter that I would just like confirmation on before we proceed. Now, in the papers, there's reference to how this subcommittee is structured, and it states that it's structured on proportionality based on political parties. And, you know, I think it was it Sean that made reference to the local review body. Now, my understanding is that the planning committee and the local review body should be non-political in terms of reaching its decisions. I wonder if Claire could possibly give governance advice on what the status of this subcommittee's position is in terms of any political bias that could come in, or whether we should be making our decisions based solely on a review of the decision that was made by the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Dougie. Claire, do you have anything, any comment on this?
Okay, all I can say is that the decisions, planning type decisions, are all covered by the Councillor's Code of Conduct. The Planning Applications Committee is set out on a proportionate basis by political group. Local Review Body is totally non-proportionate by political group. It's set on a rota basis. This committee is not planning, and it is based on, the membership is based on proportionality by political group. So in answer to your question, I guess you're just reviewing the information on its merits as you would do similarly like employment and appeals as well. But yeah, it's end of the day, you're all councillors are always going to be political bias, but there's nothing set out in the Council's Code of Conduct specific that I'm aware of on these community asset transfers. It's not covered the same way as in depth as planning is.
Thanks, Claire. Are you happy with that, Dougie? You want to come back in?
Yeah, just to make a point, Tracy, members will have noticed from the request for a review by the Community Trust that their impression was that the decision by FPT was perhaps made in terms of political bias, and I think it's important that I raised this matter to give them assurances that this particular body won't take that approach, that will make reasoned decisions based on the evidence in front of us. I think it's an important point to make so that members of the public have got confidence in the process and the decision that we make today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dougie. Ian, would you wish to come back in?
Yeah, it's just in the same point. I don't think there's any question whatsoever. There's a political bias to be considered in this and make a consideration here. It was me that made reference to the LRB as being similar to the process followed, nothing to do with political bias. Neither in an LRB or in a planning committee, political bias should never be part of it. We should base every decision on its own merits, and this is the case in this one. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Dougie, you wish to respond?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Just to reassure Ian, I wasn't pointing the finger at anyone at all, but simply because the issue was raised by the Community Trust, and we've got the papers in front of us. If you look at how members voted, it's understandable why there might be an impression that FPT was or did succumb to that. I'm not saying they did. But the voting details speak for themselves in that regard. But I'm confident that I will bring no political bias, and I'm hopeful, certainly, take Ian at his word that is the case for him as well.
Thanks, Dougie. Ian, do you wish to come back in? You got your hand up, or is it a legacy hand?
It's a legacy. I'll remove it. Thanks.
Okay. Right, okay, so are we 2.3, we feel that there is sufficient information to determine the review as detailed in paragraphs 3.7.2. Everyone happy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that too.
That's good. So going to 2.4, subject to the decision taken at paragraph 2.3, review the information provided in appendices 1 to 6 and background papers and determine if the decision made by the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee on the 17th of November 2020 should be confirmed, modified or substituted as set out in paragraphs 3.7.3. So, Sean, you wish to come in and speak on this?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just back to my point there. When I look at page 15, you can clearly see that in the counter amendment there is reasons that that based on a refusal, whereas in the amendment, which was carried right the way through, it gets back to my point that, as Jamie says, if it's only the minuted decision that is sent back to the trust, then I've got problems with the fact that there's no reason given. And on that basis, I'm inclined to think that it wasn't a correct decision to be made based on the amendment.
Yeah, so we have that point, but I think we've also raised the point that it's two separate entities, the hall and the car park. And yeah, so there's that. It's not been judged as two separate entities. It's been put in as your wording was in a job lot. So we've got those, both points there. Does anyone else have anything to say on that?
Just support that view, Chair.
Yeah, I would support that too.
So are we needing to discuss further then if we feel that those very strong points are adequate enough to determine this? So down here, so in 2.4, should the decision be confirmed, modified or substituted? Do we have any views on whether it needs to be modified? I think we're saying that we don't confirm or we don't agree with the decision due to these 2 points. Do we suggest any modification or substituting the decision completely?
I may come in.
Who's that speaking? Is it you?
Chair, it's myself.
All right,
Yeah.
and you come.
Chair, I would be happy to submit that we go back to a decision based primarily on what the area committee submitted in the first instance, and I'd be happy to submit that as a motion.
Does anyone, Dougie?
Yeah, I would tend to support what Councillor Howe has said. I've got a lot more to say about the decision and the decision that we should make, but I'll maybe keep my powder dry on that until other members have had the chance to speak.
Okay, thanks, Dougie. Ian, you wish to come in?
Yes, please. I would I know the sentiment behind that, but I think I would kind of warn against that one. I think we're here to base our decision on the process that took part at the meeting that we referred to, not the area committee. I don't know that we get upheld the area committees. Theirs was only a recommendation. I think the outcome is what we're saying is we want to approve the asset transfer, and I agree with that. But I don't think it would be wise to make any reference to the motion that went forward at the area committee, because that was only a recommendation.
Noted, Ian. I think we can support the area committee recommendation without using those words, because we have two separate reasons why we feel that the decision that they made can't be supported. You know, the decision that FPT made can't be supported, but we have to decide whether we want to, as I said, modify or completely change it to overturn the decision. Sean, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I'm inclined to go with the motion that was put forward. I just wanted, it was just on that point, or just on clarity. Do we have those full powers to do that, or does it have to be referred back to FPT to reconsider their decision?
I believe that we do have those full powers, Sean, but I will put that to either, I think it's Jamie or Colin, to come in and clarify that.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, the decision of the subcommittee today is final.
Thank you, Colin. So is anyone any otherwise minded? Sean, is that a legacy hand?
It sure is.
So is anyone any otherwise minded, or are we all on the same page of substituting the decision for support of the community asset transfer?
Yeah, I think Doogie wanted to say something else, didn't he?
Sorry, Tracy, could you confirm that you're not making the proposal that we support the area committee's decision? It's based on our grounds of the process and the reasoning behind it only.
No, you're quite right. That we won't be using that wordage at all, but it is the same decision as the recommendation, but this is purely our decision for our reasons, and we've stated our reasons. Are you happy with that, Ian?
I'm happy with that, yeah.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, Dougie, let's come back in.
Oh.
We can hear you now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I spent this morning listening to the recording of FTP or FPT, I should say, and I had real concerns about this conflation of the village hall with the car park. And you know, I think we should be supportive of a very small community trying to make that community better and to create amenity. And you know, we're often supporting investment by the council in towns like Stranraer and Dumfries, and I think quite often smaller communities tend to get overlooked. But I don't need to go into all the details that I wanted to say, because you know, my view is that we should substitute the decision of FPT and agree to the asset transfer. A couple of points just to make though. There were concerns at the committee in terms of, I'll just look at my notes here, in terms of the car park remaining available to the public, dependent upon, you know, what the community trust decides to utilise that space for. Is that a condition that we could apply? And should the project fail because their application is predicated, I think, on being able to obtain sufficient funds both from the BT exchange and from the local wind farm fund. So would there be a clawback clause should the project fail? So 2 points. Should we include a condition that there will always be public parking spaces in the current site, and will there be a clawback clause? Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Dougie. To be fair, our meeting today is to decide whether the final decision made by FPT, if we feel has been the correct decision. If we do not feel it's the correct decision, we need to detail why we think that it needs to be competent, or why we think that. I don't think we'll be going into their actual business plan. I think it's just the decision that we're dealing with. If I can turn to, I don't know whether it would be Colin or Jamie to sort of clarify that.
Thank you, Chair. I think Jamie wanted to come in prior, but if I can just touch upon Councillor Campbell's concern about future access. The Trust have been quite clear from day one that normal public access will be maintained in the car park. And it is something that we could put as a condition of transfer.
So we can add this to our, so if we decide, which I think we already have decided, to overturn that and change the decision to the different decision, and with these two, not conditions, these two reasons, we can add a condition to that.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, so would you be happy with that? Is anyone else otherwise minded about that condition added to it?
I'm certainly happy with that.
Thanks, Ian. Sean, are you happy?
Yes, I am, thanks.
Ian, how are you happy as well with that?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, then that's fine then. So, okay, we'll go back to 2.4. Subject to the decision taken in paragraph 2.3, review the information provided in appendices 1 to 6 and background papers and determine if the decision made by the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee on the 17th of November 2020 should be, and we've decided to substitute this decision for I'm thinking the right word, accept, agree to the transfer. Could we have how that would play out on that? Or Jamie, do you wish to come in?
No, it's fine, Chair. Just to say that governance has been recording a wording as we go, so perhaps just in the spirit of having the correct wording for any decision that's made, maybe if Claire takes us through.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Claire, can you do that?
Okay, Chair, I see we've also got Councillor Campbell would like to come in.
Yeah, if I could, Chair, it was just the second point I made about the clawback, should the project fail. Can we insert, I think we've done this with previous asset transfers, is have a clause that enables us to regain ownership of a site should the project fail. Is that competent?
Someone like to come in and... Okay.
I thought we'd just agreed that.
Yeah, through you, Chair, yes, I think members can put a clawback in should they choose to do so because they're substituting a decision, if you like. I don't know if you want to put some sort of time limit on that because sometimes the needs of communities can change over time. And it may be that, you know, through a place plan or a community decision, there may be another use that becomes more prominent than the current use over time. And to set the clawback in perpetuity may work, you know, may apparently or ostensibly work to the disadvantage of a community over the longer time. So you can always, I'm not saying it will or it won't, but you can always consider putting a time on your clawback phrase too.
Ian Blake?
Yeah, I think it's quite right doing that, putting a time limit. So it would suggest maybe a 10-year clawback period.
I think Jamie's advice there had been to put an actual time scale on it could disadvantage a community group. If we put, I mean, I know 10 years is quite a bit, but I think I don't know if Dougie was meaning for a time or just whether if things fail, then we could have the actual car park back again. Well, you weren't thinking about a time scale on it, were you?
Sorry, I thought you were thinking.
Not initially, Tracy. I think Jamie made a fair point though. I'm not sure if 10 years. Bearing in mind the comments that Jamie made, that 10 years might be a bit long. I'd maybe be inclined to make it for a shorter period of time. But you know, I'm not going to die in a ditch over it. I'll leave it for other members to determine what the timescale should be.
Ian, would you want to come back in? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was just to say I think that's what that was the flavour of what Jamie was saying. That if we left it in perpetuity, that we would disadvantage the community. So I suggested a period of 10 years. The 10 years is only if it fails within that 10-year period. It's not to say that within the 10-year period, if the community have another use for it, they could they could either go ahead with that or come back to us. I don't think that puts any to them to any detriment. But it's just to put for 10 years that we could take it back if the project fails. If it doesn't fail, it's theirs. Then they can do what they want with it.
Okay, does anyone else have any comments on that? Anyway, and anyone otherwise minded about putting this particular caveat? Clawback? No, everyone okay? Okay, Claire, do you have some wording for this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'll do my best to sum up here. If I missed anything out, please correct me. So the subcommittee have reviewed the decision taken at FPT I've determined that there's no reason being provided in the reason for refusal, that the hall and the car park are indeed two separate entities, and they have agreed to substitute the decision to agree that the community asset transfer to Combe Community Trust is made for the nominal sum of £1 with no specific conditions. Oh, well, you've got 2 conditions attached, and the asset and all future costs associated with it would therefore sit with the trust and the date transfer onwards. But the 2 conditions would be that normal public access to the car park would be maintained, and it would be subject to a 10-year clawback for the council to regain ownership should the project fail.
Thank you, Claire. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, I certainly am.
Everyone, can I have some yeses?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, that's great.
Yes.
Okay, then I think I've no other business. That's us done here.
Tracy, just one thing. Just I seen when I read the papers, I think that the trust had actually agreed, because there had been some concerns about the future of the car park. And I think they had intimated that they were happy for the final agreement to include a clause to that effect, which is in the papers. So I take it that will be included when we draw up the agreement.
About the public access to the car park?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Claire has just put into the wording.
Okay. Sorry, it's just I'm dipping in and out of the connection's pretty bad. So
no, Sean, that's one of the conditions. That's the first condition, that public access to the car park is maintained.
Great. Through you again, Chair. The trust are very willing for that to happen, and it is part of their plan.
So we know this will not be a worry to the trust, because this was something that they were happy to agree to anyway. As you said, Sean, it's in the papers. So no, that's in it, that one, and the ability to claw back after 10 years if the project doesn't succeed.
Cheers.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yes.
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 Well, that's great. I think that no other business deemed urgent, so I think that's us. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions.
Thanks, Jose.
Thank you.
Well done,
Thank
Tracy.
you.